The wind howled low across the barren plain, carrying with it a taste of iron and sand, the scent of a storm that had yet to arrive. The evening sun bled its last light over the rolling mesas, casting long, skeletal shadows across the dirt road that led to nowhere and everywhere in the same breath. Eli Boone, known from Dead Man's Gulch to Painted Rock as the giant cowboy for his near 7-foot frame and shoulders, like barn doors rode slow that night, his black mare snorting steam in the cooling air. Behind him, tied by a fraying rope to his saddle horn, stumbled a figure, a woman, thin as a reed, her dress torn by thorns and rocks, her bare feet scraping blood on the hard earth. Each stumble sent a jolt through the rope, each breath a ragged sob. Boone didn't look back. He'd been paid to bring her to the ridge, to deliver her to men with darker hearts than his, and in the lawless sprawl between counties, coin spoke louder than conscience. But there was something about the way her cry carried on the wind, a soft, keening sound that threaded through the night like a ghost's lament, that began to itch at the edge of his skull. It wasn't the cry of fear alone, nor pain. It was a wordless, hollowed-out wail that spoke of something broken deeper than bone. Hours passed, the sky turned from copper to ink, and the stars blinked awake one by one, indifferent witnesses to the cruelty below. Boone spat dust from his mouth and pulled his duster tighter against the chill, telling himself this was just another job no different than 100 before. He'd hauled rustlers, debtors, drifters with bounties on their heads, but never a woman like her. She had no brand of outlaw about her, no steel in her hands, only the quiet fire of someone wronged beyond mending. When they reached the dry riverbed where the moonlight pooled like silver blood, she fell for the 4th time. Boone cursed, swung down, and yanked her up by the arm. Her face caught the moonlight then, and he saw her eyes hollow, yes, but bright too, like a match in a mine shaft. "Please," she rasped, her lips cracked from thirst. "Do you know what they'll do to me?" Boone grunted, tying the rope tighter. "Ain't my business," he muttered, though his grip lingered a moment too long, rough fingers betraying the ghost of a doubt. She staggered again, her breath whistling in the cold air, and then it came. A cry, sharper than before, tearing free from her throat like a hawk's scream. It wasn't loud, it wasn't long, but it struck something primal in the night. The mare reared, eyes rolling white, and Boone felt the chill race up his spine as though someone had poured river water down his back. He froze, every muscle locked. The cry still echoed, long after her lips closed, bouncing between the cliffs in a way that made the air taste wrong. For the first time in years, Eli Boone felt small beneath the sky, as if the desert itself had heard her. Somewhere beyond the ridges, a coyote yelped, then fell silent. Boone turned his head slow, his hand on the revolver that never left his side. "What in God's name was that?" he whispered. The woman straightened, rope biting her wrists, and in the moonlight her eyes no longer looked broken, they looked ancient. "It's not God who heard me," she said softly, "but now, he's coming." The giant cowboy's breath steamed in the air as the wind died to a perfect, deathly stillness. For a long, breathless minute, the world seemed carved from stone. Boone's mare stamped nervously, the rope creaked, and the woman, this fragile, beaten creature he had dragged from some forgotten shack, now stood with a strange stillness that belonged more to a mountain than a mortal. Her cry still lived in his ears, an echo that refused to fade, worming its way into the marrow of his bones. Boone was a man carved by the West. He had killed in duels at dawn, buried friends and enemies in the same stretch of hardpan, and seen men crawl on their bellies begging for one more breath. But this was different. The wind had stopped. The night listened. Somewhere in the black gulch ahead, a horse's distant hoof beat struck once, twice, then stopped, though Boone knew no rider should have been there. His fingers twitched near his revolver, but for the first time in years, he did not draw. "Who's coming?" he growled, trying to sound larger than the unease gnawing at his gut. The woman turned her head, the rope slipping like a snake in the dust, and whispered, "The one you left for dead." Her words were no louder than a rustle of dry grass, but they carried weight, the kind that bends branches and breaks men's sleep. Boone's mind flicked through names and faces, jobs gone bloody, debts paid with bullets, men left in shallow graves, too many to count. But something about her voice made one memory rise. A ranch raid 5 winters ago, a blaze in the snow, a man with eyes like pale winter, sky swearing vengeance as the fire consumed his homestead. Boone had been there. Boone had been paid well. He swallowed, throat dry. The hoofbeats came again, closer this time, though no rider showed on the horizon. "Lady, you're playing a dangerous game," he said, but the bravado cracked like thin ice. "You think some ghost's gonna ride out that canyon and stop me?" The woman smiled, and it was not a kind smile. It was the weary curl of someone who already knew the ending. "Not a ghost," she murmured. "Something worse. Something that hears women cry when men drag them to die." Boone turned, meaning to mount and ride hard for the ridge, to leave her and the cursed stillness behind, but his boots would not move. It was as if the ground had clenched his feet in a fist of stone. The Mare's breath came harsh and panicked, her eyes fixed on the canyon mouth where now a shadow gathered. Taller than any man, broader than any bull. Boone's hand finally found the revolver, but the barrel shook in his grasp, his finger numb. From the shadow, a figure rode forth, tall, broad, his hat brim low, his face unseen. But the sound of the horse's hooves was not that of flesh and bone. It was hollow, like drums beneath the earth. The woman's cry had called him, and now he came, the one they whispered about in the Badlands, the rider who came for debts unpaid, for cruelties unatoned. Boone, the giant cowboy, felt something crack in his chest, not his ribs, but the part of him that had always believed nothing could stop him. He looked at the woman, her hair wild, her wrists raw, and for the first time, his fingers loosened on the rope. "Go," he said, the word a rasp. She did not move. She only said, "It's too late." The rider stopped 10 paces away. No word passed his lips. No breath steamed in the cold. Boone raised his gun. The rider raised his hand. The gun turned to rust in Boone's grasp, crumbling like dry leaves. He dropped it, heart pounding, the night thick as tar. "I didn't know," Boone said, though to whom he spoke, her, the rider, or the dark itself, he couldn't say. The woman stepped forward, the rope falling free at her feet, and for the first time, Boone saw her clearly, not as prey, but as judgment made flesh. "You heard my cry," she said. "Now hear this, your road ends here." And the desert listened. The rider moved, the dust rose, and the moon bore witness as the giant cowboy once feared across 5 counties dropped to his knees, the weight of all his sins pressing down like the sky itself. Somewhere far off, a coyote yipped again, but this time it sounded like a laugh. The woman turned and walked away, leaving Boone in the silver dust as the shadow passed over him, cold as the grave. By dawn, only the rope remained, frayed and empty, and the wind began to blow once more. If this tale chills your spine and makes you wonder what justice rides the night, then don't miss the next ride of shadow and steel. Subscribe to our channel and saddle up, because the West remembers, and its stories are far from over.